All right, so we had a new intro, but I effed it up. And they didn't save on Canva because the Canva was going crazy yesterday. So my apologies and welcome to the podcast. I'm your host, Joe Chapp, and that is my host, Cindy Berry. And we are here to talk Detroit Red Wings hockey all the time here on the Red Alert Podcast on Juicy Sports Detroit and wherever you get your podcasts.
Yeah,
Now
the
we
intro
got that.
doesn't matter, Joe, because we're here, and that's all that really matters.
Yeah, and you know what? Last time we talked was last Thursday. No, last Wednesday. So almost a week ago, they played their first game against the Montreal Canadiens, and that game did not go as well as planned. But we'll get to that in a moment. But last Wednesday I told you, there is going to be injuries in the NHL that are going to really hamper some teams, right? I mentioned, obviously Barkov being out for the Panthers is pretty big, right? Well, Brady Kachuk is out for at least 4 weeks for the Ottawa Senators. So
Hmm.
let's think about that. That ain't really a great thing for the Ottawa Senators because they kind of need him in the lineup. And we know as much as anybody knows that when you have 4 weeks of bad hockey, it could really change your season in a jiff. So he's out for 4 weeks. And then we have Dmitry Kulikov, who is also the Florida Panthers defenseman. He's out for 5 months. So think about that. He's out for 5 months. Guess who slides into the uh, top six of that defense? Bring in Jeff Petrie, which
Yep.
was pretty fun watching him on the opposition side yesterday because there was one goal that we got that was a gift from Jeff Petrie. So it's good. It was a very, very festive atmosphere at LCA yesterday because he was
And
like
rightfully so.
he was in a giving mood and he gave it to our guys. So obviously we know Lucas Raymond's day to day with an injury, upper body injury. He skated today, but he didn't practice and he wasn't in line. So I don't think he's going to play tomorrow against Tampa Bay or today against Tampa Bay when people listen to the podcast. But they really avoided disaster with Lucas Raymond. So that's all I could say. When you avoid, people were thinking that he was going to be out for like 2 months, and I was like, oh boy, you can't afford that. So
No, no, and it would be a real shame because they're finally starting to show some signs of life, right? In the last couple games. I mean, okay, that first game, nerves were really tight. They hadn't gotten their legs on the ice yet, really. And so they were at a somewhat of a disadvantage, even though they were on home ice. But what I saw in the last two games, it made me hopeful. And what we talked about last podcast, Joe, was the fact that this team has really improved on their depth. A lot of they've got a lot of really good quality depth players now. So if we should sustain an injury, and it's ultimately somebody's going to get hurt, it would be shocking if that didn't happen. So when we're faced with that, I'm feeling a lot better this year about what our options are, and even not just our depth that's on the roster, but also what we've got over in Grand Rapids that we can pull from as well. So I'm a lot more hopeful, even in the case of even if we sustain some injuries. And I'm grateful too, man. I was nervous. I was like, oh please don't tell me that. I mean, of all people, I mean, I think he's just one of those, he's one of those make it happen kind of guys, and he's got a lot of grit. So I didn't want to lose him, of course, but feeling a lot better about that scenario this year than I have in past years for sure.
yeah, he's got 2 goals on the season, 1 assist in 3 games, so he's averaging a point per game, per game played. And I look at that top line of Larkin, Raymond, and Finney, and they've been fantastic. Every one of them is plus. Larkin's +4, Raymond's +3, Emmitt Finney's +4. So they couldn't afford to lose Raymond long term, so they avoid disaster there. Especially when you think about all the teams across the Atlantic Division, like the Senators losing Kachuk, like the Florida Panthers losing Kulikov and Barkov earlier. It really opens up the door for the Red Wings because right now, if you were to check the standings right now, I know we're only 4 games in, but the Red Wings would be at the top of the NH would be at the top of the division with 6 points with the Bruins, Canadians, and Red Wings. And I don't think you would have had the Ottawa Senators as a 1-3 team, and the Tampa Bay Lightning to be a 1-2-1 team. But
Oh,
that's
for
where
sure
they
not.
come in. Yeah,
Right.
that's where
Yeah. Take a screenshot of that, by the way. When they take a screenshot, because we don't know how long it's going to last. Let's hope they can sustain it, Joe. Again, I'm more hopeful this year than I have been in the past. I
Mhm.
think a lot of this infusion of a lot of this new blood, and we talk about the ISER plan coming into fruition, and it could very well be that that's what we're seeing finally at long last, because we're really seeing this new young blood coming in, and it's the right new young blood. It's where they needed it, and you've got the right combination of veterans. It's again, it's taking those tumblers and getting them to click into place, and you find that right synergy. You find that right chemistry, and I'm more hopeful than I've ever been. It was interesting because I was listening to the sportscasters yesterday as I was watching the game, and they were talking about how, and I can't even remember who they were talking about. It wasn't us, it was somebody else, but they
Oh,
were talking
TNT?
about. Okay, yeah, where they
Yeah.
were like, yeah, they keep trying to put these like two what could be on paper great players together, but it's just not working. Why is that? And there's a lot of teams that, especially ones that are really heavily reliant on stats and stuff like that and analytics, tend to
Mhm.
try to push these. And at the end of the day, and I've always said this, at the end of the day, these are people. And sometimes people mesh and get along, and sometimes they don't. And sometimes you've got very unexpected partnerships and chemistry that surprises you. And so I think that the Red Wings right now are benefiting from a combination of those things.
Yeah, I think you could talk about the unexpected chemistry with the 7th round pick and Emmitt Finney being on the top line with Lucas Raymond, Dylan Larkin. Like, I don't think you could have sold that to people like 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Like, you'd have a 7th round pick on the top line, and he'd
Right.
actually be a plus player. But he's actually a really smart player, and the more you watch as a kid, he's doing a great job. So that's ISER plan. That's the ISER plan really paying off in that sense. And then you watch Sandin Pelika. I know he does have some giveaways and whatever. He's
Yeah.
a young player. He's going to grow into it. But him and Edmondson, they look really great together. And then Brand Nygaard kid, he whenever he turns it on, like when he turns it on, like he looks so good. And then when he turns on the physical element of his game,
Yeah.
boy, it just you wonder what the kid is gonna be like in like 2, 3, 4 years. And I know people don't want to think about that, but I'm sure Eiserman's thinking about that. You know?
I love what we're seeing from him. I love it, and I remember there was another player too that I had the same feeling about, and that was Mo Sider. As
Yeah.
soon as I saw Mo Sider, it was just like certain things about him. I'm just like, man, I really love that kid, and I still really do love him. And then as it turns out, not that he's always had a stellar performance every time, but he's probably one of the most consistent players that we've had, and a lot of that is the buzzword. That is the magic word, in fact. And you see it again across all sports, and they talked about it again, I think, mentioning it in the game last night, the critical importance of consistency. And I think if there's any takeaway for me, just out of this very small sample size that we're seeing of the games the Wings have played so far, is I would like to think that, with the exception of the first game, right, that's the outlier, right, that's, let's forget that one happened, but if they can continue what we've seen in these last two games against, one of the defending Stanley Cup champions, right? If we can see more of that, I think we're seeing consistency there. The other thing, which is really great, is that I'm seeing, and we talked about things. What do we like? What we're seeing. One of the things that I'm even most encouraged by is the improvement on special teams.
Yes.
You're
Yeah.
seeing so much better performance on the power play, so much better performance on PK. It's I think that was a critical piece that the Wings were missing in their special teams. They struggled last year, and I think they've made tremendous strides there. And that, again, could have something to do with the elements of the ISER plan.
Yeah, I think when you look at it from this perspective, their power play right now is uh is 6th in the NHL at 26.7%, which is a doable range. It's not like Minnesota right now, who where their power play is at 47.6. That is not sustainable by any stretch of the imagination. Then you look at the penalty kill, like, you got the Rangers and Bruins at 100%. That's not sustainable either. But you got the Red Wings over here at 88.9. That is sustainable. That's a sustainable range. And I just look at them and like there's been multitudes of the first game was just a lie, right? We seen it with the Lions, we're seeing it with the Red Wings, kind of like.
Yes.
But I thought it
Yes.
was more impressive that second game on Thanksgiving for the Chris Canadians, the Canadian Thanksgiving, playing in Toronto, and you look, that game they should not have won by any stretch of imagination. Like they were outshot big time in that game. Like they're outshot pretty big time in that game. And I go back to it and I go, so they got outshot 40-15. They win the game 3-2. And I think, you know, you look at their statistics, they've been outshot once this whole year.
Yeah.
They're even outshot Montreal and they lost, but they're putting more pucks on net. We've been talking about this for I don't know how many years we've been talking about this. Put the freaking puck on the net. You never know what can happen. And like that game against Toronto, I didn't think they should have won that game, but they did because they're 1 for 4 on the power play, and the Toronto Maple Leafs were 0 for 2 on the power play. The Toronto Maple Leafs gave away the puck more, and Detroit had
Oh,
more
come on.
takeaway.
Come on, Joe. A dub's a dub.
It's what I'm trying to say is you're going to win those games that you're not supposed to win. Like that's a game that you're really not supposed to win.
Right.
And if you could do that, that's a good sign. That's a really good sign.
Well, you need a little puck luck every now and then, right? So, and that's the thing is they talked about that. That's one of those things that can just sometimes make the difference in a very, very close, competitive environment, right? Is just having a little bit of luck. But just as you said, and we've been trying to say, and we have been saying, the great one said it best, right? You miss 100% of the shots you don't take, and you've got to start taking those shots. It might not be perfect, but you've got to at least give it a shot because you don't know, even if it's 1 out of 10 times that you catch some of that puck luck, it can happen right at the time that you need it. And the Wings have needed all the luck that they can get lately. So, our last season. So, I'm glad to see that they seem to be taking a more aggressive approach, an edgier approach. And I think
Yep.
that suits them anyway. And the other thing that it feeds into, which is something else that we've been talking about, I believe has been a psychological challenge for them. And that is that they didn't have an identity. I think they are coming out on the ice this year. They might not have defined what it is yet, but they sure are showing what it is. I think they have a much better sense of who they are this season than they have in the past.
And I think that plays in our next topic because this is probably the most important topic of the whole podcast. Is Todd he after game 1 he came out on the press conference and he laid into him, and there's people on Twitter. I felt like the soft side of Twitter. Oh, don't do that. They're gonna get
The
upset.
soft side of the cesspool.
Yeah, the soft side of the cesspool. And I just was like, no, dude, this is exactly what you need. Like you need a coach who's gonna come out here and say, no, like that's not good enough. And I have the video clip for people. This is what Todd McLellan said after the game.
That all year for me because clearly it's still a huge issue. We just played the game. We didn't play to win the game, and we have no chance. And the players will say, they probably have already said to you that, what, we can fix this, when it's time. Some of them have been doing it for years. It's time. We just spent 3.5 weeks at training camp dealing with these situations. Now, if it happened once or twice in a game, it'd be okay, but there's 6 or 7 outnumbered rushes at the end of the first period from the 10-minute mark on, and it's unacceptable. We'll have to drill it back into them.
Is it also an example of the mental toughness you've talked about?
So you're lay into those guys saying like some of them have been here for years and they're still doing this stupid shit. Like I felt like I did it was funny because there was actually someone who said the same thing as me on Twitter. And I thought it was a really good quote. But he goes, if you take what Todd McLellan said in that press conference, and who he's talking about because he said it right after the game. He literally said it right after the game. Dylan Larkin said,
I know.
We just got to be better. We just got to be better. And you just fast forward to Todd McLellan going, they're probably telling you that they should be better. And he knew exactly who was going to say it. And I flash back to when Dan Campbell did that to none other than Jared Goff. He was like, look, if he's gonna keep turning over the ball, if he's gonna keep doing this, he's not gonna be our quarterback. And sometimes as a coach, you have to like drill into people, man. Sometimes you have to be tough. And you could tell he was really pissed off, which everyone was. And I heard on the 97 the ticket the next day, people were like freaking out. But I thought it was a good thing for Todd McLellan to do because, last year we talked about it. I didn't feel comfortable about the coaches that they had on the staff. I thought Derek Malone was a bald-headed idiot. And I just didn't think he was a good coach. And I look at McLellan and he's like over here like saying like, look, I know you guys had Blashill before and freaking Derek Malone, who his power play sucks in Toronto anyways. And you guys had all these coaches that kissed your ass, but I'm not gonna kiss your ass. You guys are either gonna perform or we're gonna find someone else that can perform. And I thought that was just he literally said in that press conference, it was later in the press conference, he said, there's no passengers. Like, if you're a passenger, we're gonna kick you off the train. I was like, damn. I was like, man, this guy is like lightning. And sometimes you need that, man. And I think a lot of people, especially like when you're trying to change a culture, and people talk about the Red Wings as like, oh, back in the day they were this. Well, someone came in there by the name of Scotty Bowman. And he laid into everyone, man. He laid into Steve Yzerman. He laid into all his guys. And he was like, he created the culture that they, had for many, many years going up until 2012. So again, it's like Dan Campbell said the other day, he goes, I created the culture. The players kept it alive and they will keep it alive as long as they're here. And then they're going to teach it to the younger kids, and the younger kids are going to keep. He's like, that's the way you do it. He goes, after I sustained a culture, I didn't really need to do nothing. I think that's what Todd McLellan is doing right there.
And that's his job. That's exactly what he should be doing. And for all of those parents out there like myself, how many times have we said to our kids, look, I'm your mother, I'm your father, I'm not your friend.
Right.
I'm not going to sit here and be I love you, but, I'm not going to give you a pass on this crap. I'm not going to take your crap. And the Todd father said the exact same thing. And he basically, again, we're back to the whole identity thing, right? He's making it very clear to them who he is, what his job is, and who they are. He's reminding them, you're professionals. You are supposed to be professionals in the best league in the world, and you're not acting like it. You're not performing like it, and that's unacceptable to us. That's not who we are. We aren't sloppy seconds here, all right? We're and and yeah, I said that. And so so God bless him for coming out and making sure that they understood who and what they are and what the expectations are. And so that's a good thing. I was pleased to see it, and I was happy when Dan Campbell set the tone as well. As you pointed out, Scotty Bowman said, Scotty Bowman threatened to trade Steve Yzerman if he didn't get his crap together.
Yep.
And it wouldn't surprise me if Todd McLellan said the same thing to Dylan Larkin. Like, I don't know who exactly do you think you are? Because if you think you're the captain of this team, you're not acting like it. You need to get these guys in shape. And so I don't know if that's what he's saying, but I could absolutely endorse him saying that, and I would see why he would. And perhaps he did, and that's why we are seeing a much different team these last two games than we saw the first game against Montreal.
Well, I think what you got to look at is like two things. One thing was last year they didn't have none of the rookies on the roster until late in the year. Like Marco Kasper, if he was on the roster earlier, maybe he could have done something. But there's people that said that Derek Malone was scared to teach the younger kids. And at that point, I would say if he's scared to teach the younger kids, then he's not your coach. He just isn't. No. But I look at McLellan, and they asked him about the young kids. They go, Finney's a 7th round pick, and Brandon Nygaard is he's a 1st round pick, and then you got Edmondson and Johansson. And you got Pelika. They go, why do you want so many kids? And he goes, they won the job. And
That's right.
it wasn't because they were rookies. There was veterans that they put these rookies over the veterans, and they won the job. He goes, would you make it in your business if you were, in the media business, if you were terrible at your job and someone younger is way better at it? And then the lady's like, I think it was Helene St. James. I think she shut up after
Wow.
that.
Well,
But
she was probably thinking, what does he know that I don't know?
yeah,
Maybe he's trying to tell me something, right?
maybe he's trying to tell me something subliminally, but yeah,
Right.
I think you're right about the identity of this team because the way I look at it is like this. They needed a change in the way that they thought about the game. And I thought Henrik Lundqvist, who is a beautiful man,
Oh,
I love.
he's so beautiful.
He's a great guy, and he's the best looking guy in that whole thing. And he's just why I say that is because like I've never seen a hockey player that was so like GQ model esque.
I
Like
know.
there was
He's
some
wonderful. You thought
there
I
was
watched the game to watch the Wings? Are you kidding?
there was some thread on Twitter or X or whatever, and they were like saying like here's all here's all the GQ models in hockey, and it only had one picture. I was like, well, I can't lie, but he said something so smart though yesterday after
Yeah.
the game. He goes, they were talented last year. They were very talented last year. He goes, but now they're playing smart as well as their talent. He goes, sometimes that's the difference between winning and losing in the game of hockey. Like you can't just go out there and be talented and think you're going to win. I think everyone has it. I think a lot of people have it. How do you want to say it? They have this NHL 26, NHL 25 mindset where like, oh, I can put the best players on the team. It doesn't really matter what their overall is. We're just gonna roll through the whole schedule, right? But
Mhm.
if you look at the way hockey works, like the best teams, like I could say Nashville last year was a very talented team, but they were ass last year. So sometimes it goes into the equation of you're talented, but you're not smart, or you're talented, or you're not gelling. And what you said earlier in the podcast, I thought was the most important was, you know, these lines that they put together, like Finney and Raymond and Larkin. Like, who would have thought that would have worked together? Cop, Comfer, and Appleton, who was on the first line yesterday with Raymond's absence. That was a key one because Appleton scored the game-winning goal in Toronto. And if you think
He
about
did
it,
great yesterday too.
and that's a Michigan State kid, but
Yeah.
he was not thought of as a guy who could score many goals, and he's got 3 goals on the year, and he leads the Detroit Red Wings in goals. So it just goes to show you, like you have the right line combinations, you have the right players playing together. It's like the yin and the yang kind of thing.
Right.
Someone said that about Sandin Pelika and Edmondson because they were like Edmondson's such a stay-at-home guy, and Pelika's such a offensive-minded guy that it
Oh.
works. And I thought, yeah, that's exactly what it is. So I think that their identity that you were talking about was the fire was lit by Todd McLellan because he was like, look, whatever you guys were taught like the last couple of years, you could take that and you could throw it away. And I think that's exactly what he was saying in that first press conference because he was not happy. And I watched the whole press conference. I usually don't watch the press conference because usually it's like, oh, did you play good? Yeah. But that one I had to watch because I knew he was gonna be fuming at the mouth, dude. And he was, and he did a great job. And
Yeah.
it's kind of like Dan Campbell. Like I keep bringing this back, but like Dan Campbell when he was trying to change the culture of the Detroit Lions, which was a habitual loser, he said he came there. He called out the quarterback, which doesn't really happen. But when you have that command of respect and you start calling out people and you're like, that's just not going to work. Like it starts to send a message that like this guy means business, man, but he's also a great coach. And I think you look across sports, the best coaches right now are also the hard coaches to play for, but they our players coach. And I think that's the key right there. Like you look at Brendan Moore in Carolina, he's a hell of a coach. You look at Berube, John Cooper, all those guys. You look across football like with Vrabel, Dan Campbell, like Mike Tomlin, like those guys, like they expect a lot, but you better bring it. And you know what? If you don't bring it, someone else will. That's kind of the way that they operate. And I think that's what the Red Wings they've been missing for the last 3, 4, 5, 6 years. Like it's been a long time since they had a coach that actually gave it to him,
Yeah, told them how it is. In other applications or like in like my, executive life or whatever, my day job or whatever, I'm often quoted as saying you cannot, and this is not my quote, of course, I'm quoting the other brilliant and wise people, far wiser than I, but you can't solve a problem with the same level of thinking that created the problem. Okay. So therefore, what you saw with the two coaches basically that we've had prior to Todd McLellan, two different guys, same thinking. And that's the problem. That's why you weren't able to solve the problem, because they're both thinking in the same way that created the problem. So you needed somebody to come in with a different approach, a different point of view, and quite frankly, a whole different attitude about and expectations of what the expectations were. And I don't know if maybe some of that might have come from the top a little bit. I'm not going to totally lay it on Blashill and Newsy. I'm not going to say, because look at when all you're getting told is, hey, we're in the middle of a rebuild. Hey, don't expect much. The expectations were so low. But then it got to a point that the performance followed the low expectations into the basement. They're in the gutter. You had nowhere to go but up. And so and the same thing happened with the Lions. Now when Todd McLellan comes in, or now when you've got a Dan Campbell coming in, they're going, I got nothing to lose here, man. It's do or die at this point, and I'm going at it with both barrels, and I really don't care who's in the way, who's in the crosshairs. Everybody. And I'm not going to sit here and put up with another season or another game of the same kind of, I would say apathy or whatever, the same kind of performance that I have been having. So they absolutely, both teams needed this. The Red Wings needed this, the Lions needed it, and now look. I think when you look at the Lions today, and we're all excited to watch them, the place where they're at now, I think you're seeing where the Red Wings are probably going to be in the next 2 years too. You're going to
Yeah.
see this so long as they continue with this type of, keeping up this type of culture, nurturing this kind of culture, everybody buying into it. You got to have buy-in, which
Yep.
obviously Todd McLellan, that's where you're talking about the respect, right? These guys, these coaches who are able to change the culture are coming in with a level of respect by the players that allows for that. And that's the other thing I think we were missing before. I don't think you had that level of cachet walking in the locker room, trying to get these guys to perform. And now you do. And I think there's also, it's not lost in anybody. We've got, we're not going to have Patrick Kane forever. And Patrick Kane is probably going to be retiring soon. We don't know how long we're going to have some really, I would say bedrock type of players involved. He's going to go. They got to get this is one of their probably last chances to really make some progress. And I think they're taking full advantage of it. Thanks to, in many, many ways, to Todd McLellan.
Yeah, I think it goes back to your leaders have to lead and your coach has
Yes.
to lead. And I think
Yes.
one guy who we could kind of point to is the guy who took over for Florida and he won cups. And he was not a cup winner with Carolina back in the day. And he was not a cup winner with the Winnipeg Jets, but he came into Florida, which was a habitual loser. Like I cannot remember the last time you talked about the Florida Panthers before 2021 that they were
Right.
they were going to be some dynasty, but the GM had a plan. They put together a plan. They had the coach. I felt like the Red Wings had the GM. I think Eisman has done a good job. I just don't think they had the coach. I really don't think they had the coach. And I think Eisman kind of realized that last year when around Thanksgiving, but then he's like, okay, I can't make the change now. I got to wait till Christmas because we got a break then. I think it was a little too late, and I think he knew it was a little too late too at the trade deadline because he was like,
Yeah.
he was saying like we gotta do this and whatever. We gotta make progress, and everyone was like, why do you gotta make progress? You gotta make the. But the way he looks at it is like they weren't showing enough progress to be a good enough team, and he needed a full year of Todd to see where the progress was going. And if we get to the trade deadline this year, I will tell you this: there's already rumors about the Red Wings potentially putting some defensemen that they aren't using out for trade for potentially, to get draft picks, and then that way they can go get a center because that's what David Pagnotta, Daily Faceoff said that they're looking to unload Gustafsson and Hamnick, which there's going to be a team that's going to find one of them suitable. I mean, you look
Yeah.
across the NHL. There's defensemen that are not supposed to be in the spot that they're in, and they're playing there. And it's all about the play of the team and the way that they set themselves apart. Like
Yeah.
there was a Ranger fan that was like, "I'll take Gustafsson back with the Rangers right now," and I'm like, "All right, let's
Yeah.
go."
Yeah.
Hamnick,
Let's do
Hamnick,
it.
Hamnick would be good with I think Boston. There's Boston fans that say they want Hamnick on their third pair, but that's what you see across the NHL. Like not one team, just because they don't work here doesn't mean they can't work somewhere else. So that's the way it goes. So it's going to be interesting to see how this team keeps going. But I have high hopes for this team right now. I think they're doing a really good job, and I think we could both agree that they're playing pretty well.
They got to maintain the consistency. They have got to stay consistent. And that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for some consistent play. I get it. Results can vary, right? The puck bounce is funny for everybody sometimes, but let's see the systems. How are the systems working? Are the systems working consistently well? Are the lines working consistently well? Are the special teams units working consistently well? Let's see if that's happening. Because if that's happening, then you can, like you said, you can afford or you can understand the occasional loss or maybe the unexpected or undeserved win. But at the end of the day, end of the season, when you're coming into postseason, you're going to be well positioned to make the postseason and to make a deep drive into the postseason, not just squeak in. Let's not talk about the Tigers, right? And their disastrous implosion, and then what happened in the postseason, which should have been expected based on the way that they got in there. But I know, it's ugly. It's ugly. We
You
don't
don't
want
want
that.
you don't want to be that team. Like
Right,
you don't
because
want you don't want to
there's a
be where you're
perfect
you don't
example of inconsistency.
you don't want to be where your best players are your worst players at playoff time.
Yeah,
Like that's ridiculous. And I agree with you 100%. You want to get to a case where your best players are playing the best hockey that they are, and that goes into what we're talking about right now is what's clicking with the Red Wings. And I think what is clicking is that first line with Raymond, Finney, and Larkin. But I think all the lines are really clicking at the lines that they were set in. They're really clicking together. And like you said, you just got to keep growing, keep getting better game by game by game. And when you get to the playoffs, you have 4 deep lines and they play together. And that means that you're going to be going against teams that might have 2 or 3 or, they might have 3 lines and it can be a mismatch advantage. I was listening to one podcast that I like to listen to. They're very smart hockey people, and they were talking about the Red Wings, and they were saying, you imagine you go against the Red Wings, and the first line is pretty good, right? Second line is with Kane and DeBrincat and Casper. All right, that's pretty good. But you get to the third line, you got Chapp and Comfort and this kid Brancy Nygaard, who's he's a huge man. He's a big man, and he likes to play a little bit physical. And I think the Red Wings leading hitters right now are all rookies or young players. I
Yeah.
think Edmondson's up there, Nygaard's up there, and Soderblom, I think. And then you go to that fourth line, and we've been talking about that fourth line, but the fourth line has Appleton moving up to the first line right now with Raymond out. But that fourth line was Soderblom, Rasmussen, and Appleton. And they were like, these 4 lines are legit. Like, they've never been more legit in Detroit. And it's like, yeah, you know what? I think it is. It's they're tough to play against. And I think it's not like the same thing with the Tigers, where the Tigers, you just had to get past one batter and you knew that you were gonna get, an easy out with Carpenter. But Carpenter was the guy that you had to watch out for. He was gonna hit the home run. But if you could just get the Green and you can get the Torres and Torkelson, like you can make them swing at bad pitches.
Right.
It's not like that. You gotta with the Red Wings, you gotta make sure you got the right people and you'll be good.
Well, because here's what happens when you're in that position, is that when you roll into a game 7 of an elimination game, a series deciding game, and your fourth line winger, shoots in your game winning goal, like our friend Darren McCarty, that's when you got a championship team. And I think that this Red Wings team has the capacity to do that, and they have the talent to do that. And I think they have finally found the chemistry. They finally bought into a culture, and those ingredients that we're missing seem to have, again, very small sample size, but they seem to have added those missing ingredients. And so let's hope that we see more of that. That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, I think what I'm looking for with this Red Wings team moving forward is like you look at the Red Wings right now and their schedule, like we said it in the first podcast. We said this schedule is tough. And you're going to learn a lot about this team. Well, the first game you learned a lot about this team, but the last 3 games where they've won 3 straight, you've learned that they can really take a beating and still come out and play their best hockey against the Maple Leafs. They won they won 2 in a row. They beat the defending Stanley Cup champions yesterday. They play Tampa Bay. They play Edmonton to finish out the homestand. Then next week they go to Buffalo, who is struggling. They talk about a team that has never changed the culture. That's the team. Like you literally have players going, I don't know, man. I don't know. We're 4
Yeah.
games into a season. If you don't know,
You got problems. Well, that's
Major-
the thing. And
major
that's one of the other things that we talked about, last show, was that this stretch of games, one of the very valuable things about this schedule is that they're playing some high quality caliber teams, and we'll be able to see how well they handle them, and what a tremendous boost it must be to their confidence now, just in the last 3 games, having beat the defending Stanley Cup champions, having beat a longtime rival, someone that there's some very, very good wins in there. So it wasn't just the number of wins. It isn't just what kind of we're seeing develop, but also it's who they beat.
Right.
That I think is going to just do tremendous benefits, pay dividends to their confidence, rolling into this next part of the schedule.
Yeah, and I think there was a lot of people that said like there's one guy I was talking to. He's like, it's not who they beat, it's how they beat them. And I was like,
Okay, I can go
okay.
along with that.
And he goes, you played your worst game against Toronto in Toronto and you won. You outshot Florida, you outshot at Toronto at home, and you outshot what was the other team? You outshot Toronto, Florida. Yeah, you outshot Toronto. You outshot Montreal. You lost because of defensive miscues. You got outshot in the game that you won 3-2. But your penalty kill has been good. Like you've been keeping teams off the board on the penalty kill. You've been getting points with the power play. Like, and he goes, you're not playing like these half-ass teams. Like you're playing some really good teams that are really good, teams. And Tampa Bay's a good team, and Edmonton's a good team. And then when you go play Buffalo and the Islanders back to back, like those will be tough games, but you could really bury them. And just because of the way you've been playing, and I watched the game yesterday between Chicago and St. Louis, and like St. Louis got absolutely lambasted by the Blackhawks, and Frank and Nazar, your boy, scored a goal. And they're trying to fight themselves out of they're trying to fight themselves out of a paper bag. But I
Yeah.
did hear something interesting. It was one of the guys was like, I don't know, I think Nazar is the face of the franchise, and you kind of said that the long time ago. I think last year. But it just goes to show you, like, these teams this early in the year, like, there's some teams that look so bad, and they're just like they're inconsistent. And one thing you like about the Red Wings right now is consistently they're playing pretty good hockey. They make mistakes, obviously, but they're not making these big mistakes.
They're not
I
making
think
stupid mistakes. You know what I mean? They're not taking stupid penalties. And the other thing, they're taking smart penalties. If there's a penalty, they're serving a purpose. Their penalties are serving a purpose. They're not just careless, haphazard, stupid penalties. And they're not taking that many of them. So what I think one of the things that's clicking with the Wings that I see is that they are creating offensive opportunities, but they're also shutting down offensive opportunities for the teams that they're playing. So they're taking away opportunities for the opponents at the same time creating them where they weren't before for their forward lines to put pucks in the net, and that's you got to have both.
Mhm. Yeah, and I look at the schedule that we have coming up with, next week we'll probably record the podcast on maybe like next Tuesday or whatever, because they got a game Wednesday and Thursday.
Yeah.
But the way I look at this stretch right here for the Red Wings is like they got Lightning and Edmonton. We'll learn a little bit more about this team before we go to the next podcast. And then when you go this 4-game stretch that they had, this 3-game stretch they have where they 4-game stretch, they play St. Louis twice, the Islanders and Buffalo. I think if you can go 4-0, you 3-1, you're really gonna create some room between you and other teams in the division. So I like where they're at. I think they're playing good hockey. I wasn't, I was more high on them than you were at the season preview. I think that, well,
Yes.
you were a little more high than me because someone said 100 points. Cindy said 100 points. I was like, you know what, Cindy?
What do you, how do you like me now? No, I'm just kidding.
Well, yeah.
I
But
might be a little more right than they know, more
Well-
even than I know. Maybe I was trying to be optimistic, but no, you were higher on them in certain ways than I was.
Well, we're not going to talk about the way that was high on him, which was John Gibson. He did not look good in game 1. So we're going to see what he does in the next couple games, because I imagine that Cam Talbot's going to get the day off one of these games. But yeah, it's just that first game was brutal from every standpoint. So
We're gonna forget about that one.
we're
That
early
one
in the
never
season.
happened.
We're very early in the season, but the Red Wings are still cranking, and I know a lot of people are still in the football mode, but I think a lot of people enjoy the hockey coverage and all that. So, look, the Red Wings have a game. They play tomorrow, or if you're listening on a Friday, today against Tampa Bay at LCA. Tickets are still available. You can get them right there. And then they play Edmonton on Sunday, which the Lions don't play on Sunday. So this could open up a spot for Detroit fans to, see what the team
That'll be a
had
good game.
against a good team and one of the best players in the world. So
Yep.
this is going to be a very interesting month, because we said coming in, if they could split this portion of the schedule, I said 3-3. Remember that?
Yeah.
They're way ahead of that right now. So if they can split this, and then they can go to play Buffalo, New York, and then St. Louis, and they could be in a really good spot coming into the November thing, because we always say when we get to November around Thanksgiving is where kind of where you stand in the playoff hopeful category, and usually teams that are in the playoff, 75% of them make it. So when we get to Thanksgiving, that's where you're going to learn a lot about this team, and I think a lot more people are going to be like taking notice of this team. We're in October, no one really cares. When we get to November, people start to care. December, people start to care. Obviously, January, when all the stuff starts winding down and we go into hockey and basketball season, I think a lot of people are going to be like, where does Red Wings team come from? And they can come right back here to the Red Alert podcast and listen to us, because we had some pretty good things to say. And we'll see you guys in the next podcast. We talk more Detroit Red Wings hockey here on the Red Alert podcast. Obviously, it's like a little 45-minute one, but we'll do 2 when we get to January. That's kind of our plan. We said we were going to do 2, but we'll do 2 when we get to January. That way we can be right. When people
Right
are
in the
starting
thick
to
of
get
it.
when people are starting to get right into hockey, we can get right into hockey, and that way we're not over stimulating our people. So we'll see you guys in the next podcast. We talk more Detroit Red Wings hockey, and as me and Cindy will say, thank you for listening, and we'll see you in
Thank
the
you.
next one.
See you then.